Professor Shanmugam was born near Srirangam in Tiruchirappalli, and he has obtained
Yes, sir.
two
Good morning.
master's degrees. Can you hear me? Shobha, sir. Good morning, sir.
Um,
Yeah, two master's degree, one in environmental science, another in environmental engineering from IIT Madras, and his doctoral degree,
yes, sir.
outstanding PhD from University of Leeds, UK, under the Commonwealth Fellowship, and he has more than 27 years of scientific and academic research experience in CSIR. Dr. Shanmugam is working as the head of the Department of Environmental Sciences, Chief Scientist and Professor of ACIR in CSIR, and his core area of research is predicting the urban photochemical smog forming potential in Delhi during the winter season and comparing with the Los Angeles condition, which has alarmed the need for alternative fuels, that is CNG, compressed natural gas, for the Pollution Control Board, and he has contributed his research on mitigating the vehicular urban air pollution and use of industrial and municipal solid waste for road construction purpose. So his core area of researches are tannery wastewater treatment, solid waste management by generating biodiesel, bioethanol, biohydrogen, and biomethane as the world's first biorefinery plant. And he has been working closely with various municipalities in India, particularly every municipality in Tamil Nadu, and converting the municipal solid waste into biogas for operating the cars and buses. And as a scientific output to the direct benefit of the society, he has executed nearly 21 on-site large biogas plants for power generation using the urban, municipal, and industrial organic solid waste. And as a and he has supported in the Ganga Action Plan technology with the ZLD calls the zero liquid discharge, and he also harnessed with number of awards like Commonwealth Fellowship, Peter Wilson Awards, and he has been elected and nominated as a chair, Institution of Waste Management, Institution of Public Health Engineers, International Water Association. In addition to that, our speaker has was is the second recipient of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Memorial Best Scientist Award by the Department of Higher Education, bestowed upon the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu on the eve of 70th Independence Day. And he is the board member of number of academic council, board of studies in Anna University, NIT Trichy. So he is the member and chairman of several national and international committees. So we are having one of the eminent speaker, researcher, scientists in front of us for delivering this opening session. Now the session is open to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Soundaryanagi. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Although I'm out of station, I'm at Indore in Madhya Pradesh. There was a Tata company, Tata International Exports Limited at Devas. I came for an official work here, but I thought still I must address to my lovely students who are going to be the future pillars of this nation. So I thought I must contribute. Thank you very much, our Vice Chancellor, really, who made a very inspiring speech in the morning. And thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming online and such a nice way amidst your busy schedules. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Director, Center for Research, and Dr. Soundaryanagi, both of you. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a pleasure. I always encourage students to do a good research and write a good research paper. So the today's topic that you have been given to me, I thought to restrict only to half an hour to 45 minutes. Writing an abstract and an executive summary is the topic that you all gave me. It's an interesting topic. Writing a research paper, before you think of it, you have to segment, you have to plan while writing the research paper. How much is the total number of pages you are going to write, in which how many pages are supposed to be for abstract, supposed to be for the introduction, supposed to be for the materials and method, and for results and discussion, conclusion, graphs. So all these, first of all, whenever you write a research paper, you have to go to the journal choose the journal and see the journal's specifications, how many words and how many characters they have given a minimum limitation for writing an abstract. Because you cannot write 400 words if the limitations of that journal is only 100 words. So, in my opinion, it's very easy to write a complicated sentence, but it's very difficult to write a simple sentence. So, therefore, what I would suggest, first of all, you have to go through the journals, specification of the journal, how many graphs is entitled, how many words, how many characters, and how many number of tables, and how much character and total words of the whole paper. So first you have to choose that. Then accordingly, you have to classify how much percentage you are going to give for materials and methods, how much percentage you are going to give for results and discussion, and so on. And I'm not going to talk to you about how to write the materials and methods or results and discussion. And that part would somebody else will take over. But however, I would suggest abstract the minimum words or the maximum words on your limitation. You have to understand what exactly the number of minimum words are given for you. So here, abstract generally minimum 150 words. See journal specification. Keywords should be a maximum 7 to 8 keywords you are supposed to mention it. See. Mr. One. அது என்னது இதை கிளிக் பண்ணுங்க அந்த மேலே இருக்கு. இடையில வந்துச்சு அதை கிளிக் பண்ணிட்டேன். Okay, so after so this is while writing the PhD thesis. Normally I aim its synopsis should be 2 to 3 pages. Organization of the thesis, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. Introduction, 5% of the whole thesis. Aims and objectives, scope of the study, literature review. So in that, synopsis should be minimum 2 to 3 pages of the whole thesis. So now my intention is to tell you about how to write synopsis, how to write abstract, and how to write an executive summary. An international standard of writing a research article or a proposal that you must understand. So you might ask me, sir, to write an international standard of research article writing, do you have to pass through your TOEFL or IELTS exam? You might ask me that question. But it is for the normally those who are going to study abroad for doing PhD. The first prerequisite qualification to get admission is IELTS or TOEFL you have to pass if you want to get an admission at any foreign universities. So therefore, while they are getting admission itself, they are writing the, including me, we wrote the intelligence English language testing system and the TOEFL exam, any one of it, and to pass the exam at a high score, particularly for some universities, you must score 90%, then only they will admit you for getting a PhD degree, for getting admission into a PhD degree. But why I mention it here, the English have to be an international level of your writing skill. Why it is so? Whatever the English you are going to write, your thesis is going to a foreign examiner who are well versed with the foreign style of English writing. So it is your duty to fulfill a foreign style of English writing examination skill. So you have to fulfill the standard of the foreign examiner, and for which I would suggest the students in the part of your 3 years course, please take an attempt to go for an IELTS exam, Intelligence English Language Testing System exam, or TOEFL exam, that will build you tremendously on writing skills of the international way of writing skills of your synopsis, abstract, and so on. So initially, normally whenever you write an abstract, the abstract is looked at it whether you have written in an international level of English or a local level of English. That's the most important thing that you have to choose. So when you want to write an international level of English writing, you have to mandatorily or probably I request so far Dr. Soba here, and he is a very good English teacher, and she can take a separate course for all the students on how to write an international English way of writing a PhD thesis or synopsis. Because when I went to England, even after passing the TOEFL IELTS exam, for all non-English native country students, we had to attend an English language course mandatorily to secure how to write a PhD thesis in international global level of English language. So therefore, prepare to attend this, and it will be of helpful to you. So initially, because the abstract also included a title composing the title, because if the title is very ambiguous, nobody would like to read your paper. So the title have to be short and very sweet title. Here I would like to mention, there are 5 years or 6 years, a movie is taken. But if you see the title of the movie, it is not more than 2 words. But 5 years we do a PhD thesis. If you see the title of many of the PhD thesis, not less than 3 big sentences, 3 lines, big lines of 3 lines they used to write. That's the title of the thesis. So, but we must always understand why the movie's title is only 2 words and why the PhD thesis title is 3 big paragraph or 4 big paragraph in the first page of the title. So, as short as possible, we should try to understand how to write your title of the PhD thesis, because your title is very sweet and very attractive. Then only the entire thesis people will read to understand. And particularly if you look at Tamil movie, say Padikadavan, it's just one word of the whole movie of 4 years, 5 years they take the movie. So likewise, make it a very short and sweet title. How much time our parents would have kept coin our name as a title our name? Not a big time. They would have taken just only 3 week or 3 days just to tell our name. And the name is not a 20 lines or 30 lines, you see. Attractive title relevant to the paper. Wrong or irrelevant topic, titles for a project or a paper would lead to confusion. Attractive short title is needed. Data acquisition system, image processing, digital communication system, network control system, analysis and IC engine people normally try to make as a simple title as possible. No more than 2.5 lines it should be. The maximum good PhD thesis can be in 1 line. And a second category, it can be in 2 lines. And worst case, you must write only 2.5 lines. So that should be the title. Title should directly convey your paper or not the proposal. Whatever or the proposal, because the title should exactly specify what you have done it. Titling is really not. See movie's title, that's what I was trying to explain to you. Suggestions normally, whenever you write an abstract, please do not fail to use these words, connective words. Eventually, consequently, apparently, subsequently, interestingly, nevertheless, contrary to this, supporting to this, therefore, however, for instance, in addition to this, in view of this. These are the connective sentences if you have. So, whenever you write an abstract, you have to write in a bit emotional way. Subsequently, apparently, consequently, eventually. So that means you are trying to express your abstract of a thesis with a little bit of your emotion. The emotion comes if you have done a very good research work, if you got a very good result. So when you write the word eventually, when you write the word nevertheless, when you write the word apparently, it means you are communicating your research with a lot of interest, with a lot of focus. That is how the reader also try to understand that you got a passion for research. So synopsis writing, synopsis 8 to 12 equal paragraphs in 2 to 3 pages, as I told you, within 72 lines. That's an university specific. You have to also look at it, the university specific, journal specific. But my general thing would be 2 to 3 pages, 8 to 12 equal paragraphs. If it is 2 pages, 8 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs in a page, 8 paragraph in 2 pages, and 12 paragraph if it is there in 3 pages. So first paragraph, normally it's synopsis writing. So you have to make a content of your synopsis. Whenever you write, you have to plan it. What is that you are going to write in the first paragraph? What is that you are going to write second paragraph and third paragraph and fourth paragraph, like that? I'm trying to guide you. what should be it? The PhD should be for mechanical, civil, any kind of engineering, science, or arts, or any kind of thesis. But the art of writing the synopsis, the first paragraph should convey the background of your thesis, or background of your paper, or background of the proposal. The second paragraph should say why this topic is needed and what is the scope of the research. And third paragraph should convey aims and objectives of the whole thesis. And fourth paragraph should say methodology about experiment, modeling, surveying, what you have done. That's the research methodology. What kind of a research methodology that you have adopted? It should be in the fourth paragraph. And the first page is over. On the second page, fifth and sixth paragraph, it should be results with the similarities, R-square values, linearity, and so on. Seventh paragraph, interesting conclusions of the thesis. And eighth paragraph should have conclusions and recommendations. So if you look at it on the second page, completely about your results, discussion, conclusions, and recommendation only, the second page should have. So on the first page of the fourth paragraph, you have your background, you have your scope of the research, a need for the research, and you have your aims and your methodology, what you have adopted. Whereas in the second page, it should completely cover about what is your research conclusions, what is your, or rather you can even carry forward to the third page also on the 12 paragraphs which I said about it. On the third page also, if you have a very good result, you can take it off there. But when you are writing your synopsis, you must also say in the first paragraph itself, whole of the thesis contains what you have written in the introduction, preferably what you have written in the aims and objectives, what you have written. So the first chapter describes what, the second chapter describes what, third chapter describes what. So about each chapter, what does it describe? What is the take-home message your whole thesis is telling you? So you have to write in the whole of your entire thesis content within the first or second paragraph, your conclusions in the last conclusion, what it conveys. In methodology, what it conveys. Likewise, so you have to tell about each chapters first itself if you are writing a PhD synopsis, and then you have to start about the first paragraph, background, second. So in the second page it will come, and the third page also you'll have results and discussion. Demonstrate minimum 6 new take-home messages for every reader. At least 10 take-home message is very good, but 6 new take-home message. I've written a word new and a novel take-home message. So the new and novel, it should be totally a new message that you have to convey, not the old message or not the literature review message you have to convey as your conclusion or as your results and discussion or as your thesis. So you always prefer to take 6 new novel messages, 6 new novel messages or 10 new novel messages out of your thesis. So writing an abstract. So whenever you write an abstract of your whole thesis, before you write an abstract, my sincere suggestion would be to take a graphical abstract of your whole research paper or a PhD thesis. So if you take up a graphical abstract means pictorially, you have to make a schematic flow diagram kind of a graphical abstract. So for example, I can just share you a graphical abstract at the end of my presentation, what is called a graphical abstract. But once you write your graphical abstract, the graphical abstract should convey exactly what is the source of sample that you have taken. Say, for example, from industry, you have collected a sample. So your first box at the bottom should be textile industry. Then from the top, second box will be collecting samples from textile industry. Third paragraph will be your third box will be your research methodology. And fourth paragraph will be what methods you have adopted, various methods. And fifth box will be your optimization of any parameters. And sixth paragraph will be various parameters that, so likewise, you have to make a box-based, a bullet point-based or box-based graphical abstract, and the abstract will tell the others of the whole thesis what you have invented also. So at the end of your abstract, starting from the collection of sample, at the end of your abstract should say what is the novel conclusions that you have given out of the whole thesis. So if somebody sees the abstract very nicely, if you're prepared, there is less chances of failing your research paper in anywhere, because whenever you prepare an abstract, you yourself will come to know The graphical abstract is the major conclusion that you are going to make of the whole thesis. So therefore, my humble suggestion to all the students, please prepare a graphical abstract before you start writing your original thesis abstract or a journal paper abstract. So in the abstract, while writing the abstract, there is whether it could be for arts, it could be for the science, or it could be for the engineering, you must have a defined sentences framing. What should be the first sentence, what should be the second, what should be the third, what should be the fourth. It is common to everybody. So that is how I brought in here. The first line should say, this paper describes what. So the first line should say, this paper describes the title of your paper there. For example, optimization of the pH for maximized biogas production, or optimization of the pH for maximized bioaviation fuel production. So that means this paper described the optimization of the biofuel production using so on so. So likewise, when you write first line of every research paper or every executive, it should say, this paper describes what. The second line should say why this paper is needed, why this research work is needed. Here you have to say, if you don't do this research, what will be its implication? So the second paper should convey why the scope, what is the scope of this research, why this research topic is needed. The third line should say application of this paper, where this paper can be applied, where this paper can be useful. Sometimes the third line you can also bring at the end of the abstract also, because here why the third line I brought in application of this paper. Then when you want to apply to a specific industry, the people can visualize whether your conclusion of the results of your paper would really be suitable for the industry that you have selected or not. So therefore, sometimes you can write in the third line itself on application of this paper or this data, the data that you are going to collect, you must write what up. So for example, the optimization of the pH of the maximized production of bioaviation fuel would minimize the fuel expenses in the aviation sector. That will be your application. Or you can say the self-sustained production of aviation fuel can be achieved using this methodology. Likewise, you have to write what application of this paper. Fourth, fifth line should tell you about the experimentation of the paper, what way you have experimented, what way you have collected the data. How did you experiment? Mesophilic condition, thermophilic condition, what temperature, what humidity. If it's a thermochemical engineering, what is the temperature and what is the chemical thing that you have made it. So simply, fourth and fifth line, you must write about your experimentation of what you have done. If it's a English literature PhD, you can write what theorem you have adopted, what model, what method you have adopted. So you must write about the methodology part of it on fourth and fifth line. And sixth and seventh line and eighth line should convey the interesting result and the observed lower and higher results that are attributed due to white. So in the sixth and seventh line, normally sixth and seventh line, you have to mention the actual data that you got it. But that actual data should not be a vague or ambiguous data that you should mention, but you must mention what is the data that was interesting to you as well as to the reader. So you, instead of mentioning the whole data of your thesis of 3 years data, you cannot mention. But out of that 3 years data, what is the interesting data you got it? That interesting data, you have to bring it. So while writing, you must write the minima of pH was observed, whereas the maxima was observed in this reactor, which was attributed to. The minima is attributed to, and the maxima is attributed to. The reason also you must give it. So whenever you say the minima or the minimum-most value you got it, which is attributed to, whereas the maximum-most value you got it, which is attributed to. So these sixth and seventh line, when you say the raw data, when you say the raw data in your abstract, you have to also say why this minima and why this maxima that you have observed. At the same time, and the third, at the end of your sixth, seventh, or eighth line, you have to say what is the interesting data you got it. You might say minimum, you might say maximum, But what interesting data you got it? And that interesting data should be completely different from the previously published research paper. Then only the data can be very interesting. For example, in Chennai, there was no day that we have noticed a 0 degree temperature. By somebody has noticed a 0 degree temperature, and perhaps the someone is conducting an external atmospheric temperature based experiment. So they got some very good data of melting of some alcohol or some material during the winter season. So nobody knows why this alcohol has got melted when they kept it outside. So you can say the temperature exceptionally was observed during the December month at Chennai was 0 degrees centigrade. And that has favored or that has facilitated to the melting of that alcohol, or even though at the atmospheric temperature. So likewise, when you write the 6th and 7th sentence, you should say minima, maxima, and you should say reason for that. And also you should point out whether that reasoning was already reported elsewhere in the previous publisher or not. That should also be mentioned. So when you write, which is attributed due to this reason, and then we should keep a full stop, state that this was also observed by elsewhere by some other author. That means similar results were also reported elsewhere. You don't have to mention who has mentioned, which author has mentioned, because in the abstract, you should not mention anybody, any author or anybody's reference, you should not mention. But at the same time, this result was also consistent with the report results reported elsewhere. So that means you got your results good, and you got your reasoning is good, and also you got your consistency with the other researcher is also good. That is what normally, if you would have heard all my previous lecture speech, I define research as a research. Someone has searched and concluded as a result, and your student is going to search. That is what search, and that's called research. And that is the reason in the abstract, whenever you write it, whenever you mention some interesting result or new result, in a way, this concept was also observed elsewhere by some other author. If you mention it, that means your data has got authenticated. The concept has got authenticated by elsewhere. But the results, you got a new result, which is novel, which is original, that way. So always you should mention the R-square values are consistent values or corroborated values in the 6th and 7th and 8th line. So whenever you say the minima and maxima was attributed due to, and then this was also coincided with the maximum R-square values observed between these two data. So then the first one, you said minima and maxima was attributed due to the reason. And the 7th and 8th line, you should also say the reason was established with the high R-square that you have observed. So therefore, your research, you have to substantiate your information and your novel ideas, novel conclusion that you got it by a statistical evidence of R-square values. So normally, please, all of you make use of it. An R-square value, something like a biologist or biotechnologist might think, sir, mine is more of a qualitative work. How I can get an R-square value and how I can mention it in an abstract. Yes, you have to transform your qualitative data into a quantitative data and to know what exactly the high R-square or low R-square. Then you have to also look at it some statistical evidence of chi-square, t-test, best fit curve, canonical correlation, polynomial regression or linear regression, or like that. You should also mention, and without a statistical evidence of any research work, the research work becomes a less valued research work. Therefore, at the end of the results and discussion, you must always mention what is the R-square value that you got it, and that R-square value was consistent or not, and whether it was corroborated well or not. So 6th, 7th, and 8th line, you have to mention about it. And 9th and 10th line, what was your interesting conclusion that paper can carry forward to the reader? So 9th and 10th line, you have to say what is the interesting conclusion of the paper. So you have 6th and 7th and 8th line, you have reasoned out, you have substantiated with an R-square value, you have given the minimum and maximum data, but in the 9th and 10th line, what is that out of this you are trying to conclude? And the conclusion have to be a novel, original, and it should be totally a new conclusion you must be able to give it. That is why 9th and 10th line should have a complete novel, new, interesting result. So you should always, you mention, interestingly, this was observed. So that will make sense that you got a very passionate expression of your result that you got. You love your result. First of all, we must learn to love our result. We must feel excited of our research that you are doing. It's not that just because I'm a scientist, I always feel that the excitement I'm trying to tempt on you, you must get an excitement. It's not, it's different. But any researcher, whether it's a professor or a scientist, when you get a very good result, you must excite yourself because that's a new and novel idea. That's how it comes while writing also, interestingly, eventually, apparently, all this. So while reading the abstract itself, we could judge whether the researcher who written that abstract was involved deeply in the research or not. So if somebody has involved deeply in the research, they would always write paper in a very sequential way without any hanging sentences, terminated sentences. And the first line, second line, third line, fourth line, up to 11th and 12th line, within the 100 line, within the 100 words or within the 200 words of limitation, you have to express in a very sequential way. The first and prime most important in writing an abstract, the connectivity should emerge from the first line to the second line to the third line to the fourth line. So likewise, every sentence should have a connectivity with the other previous sentence. So most of the people they write, there will not be any connectivity of the sentences. There will be a lot of hanging sentences, terminated sentences will hang on the line without any connectivity. So when you write, that's what I said. The connectivity in sentences, writing and phrasing sentences are very well trained when you are writing a TOEFL IELTS exam. I would say when I went abroad for doing my PhD, I really enjoyed, scored well in IELTS and TOEFL exam. And that time I really learned the art of connecting the sentences with using the very good conjugate word, very good phrasing word, and how do you connect the sentences? That's more important. And the connectivity should be created from every sentence. And when you write executive summary, the connectivity should be from first paragraph to second paragraph to third paragraph, and the paragraph connectivity should be there. And when you write the whole thesis, when you write an introduction of it, at the end of the introduction, you should create a connectivity. What is the next chapter of literature review is going to talk about? The end of the literature review, what is that methodology is going to talk about? The end of the methodology, what is the results and discussion is going to talk about? In the results and discussion, you might divide into 3 chapters or 4 chapters. The first chapter, when you write on the results and discussion, within the results and discussion, at the end of it, you must create a connectivity to the next chapter. So whenever we write a thesis, always make sure you must create a connectivity between sentences, connectivity between the paragraph, and connectivity between the chapters, and connectivity between the whole thesis. So when you prepare a graphical abstract, you would understand how to create a connectivity between each sentences and paragraph and everything. So on the 11th and 12th line, I said the paper recommends what? The paper recommends what is that you are recommending to the reader at the end of your paper. So this is the skeleton or the content within the abstract writing skill. So normally this is the way you write an abstract on the first and second and third line, whichever it is, thermal engineering or chemical engineering or mechanical engineering, whichever it is, this is the how we have to frame the writing an abstract material. So this is how I simply shown to you a small case study on writing an abstract. You can see this paper describes the impact of OLR, HRT, and so on. So many hydrodynamics and microbial dynamic parameters govern the biological performance of an anaerobic digester. So which means this is the scope of the whole paper. And these parameters were investigated in the present study. And the experiment was conducted at mesophilic conditions. And the minima, you can see here the minima of the pH minima was observed at high OLR, whereas the pH maxima was observed at low OLR. This is attributed due to high accumulation of organic acid. And consequently, the high accumulation of organic acid was conducive to an acidic pH, which was corroborated well with the high acid-forming microbial population. A high R square value observed between pH and ammonia confirms that ammonia toxicity is the major problem in the anaerobic digester of protein-rich wastewater. Interestingly, the peak at 5.5 yielded the maximum hydrogen, which was contrary to the results reported already. This is attributed due to the maximum synthesis of organic acid, particularly butyric acid, essential for the production of hydrogen at this pH, contrary to the results reported. So the paper concludes. Further, the paper recommends. So this is the case study. You must write, while you're writing this, what a sequence, as I said in the previous slide, this paper describes the whole scope of the paper, aims of the paper, and the parameters that you have investigated in the paper, and the experiment that you have conducted, and the results you got it, and the interesting results consequently, and what was corroborated well, everything, the R square value, and that confirms what, and that is attributed to. And interestingly, so this is how you have to frame the abstract, because when somebody reads abstract, because most of the time, the thrill of the movie is created by putting a small title as an advertisement. The abstract is an advertisement for your research paper, for your PhD thesis, for your executive summary, and particularly for your research proposal whenever you write to funding agencies. So the abstract and the executive summary are the synopsis, I said, and there are 12 paragraphs equally of 3 pages. Whenever you write a research proposal also, normally most of them, they don't write an executive summary of the research proposal. That's a very big mistake normally they do. You must express the executive summary of the research proposal. So if you write the synopsis, that's what I mentioned to you about. And this is a simple way of writing your abstract. And if you have anybody doubt, possibly at the end of it, I'll give you my email ID, and you can be in touch whenever you write a research paper. Possibly if you write one research paper with a systematic methodology, there is a abstract writing methodology. You don't feel research methodology means that experiment is the research methodology, or conducting an experiment is the research methodology. Abstract writing itself has a method. That method only Professor, Director of Center for Research, all of them have taken a great initiative to teach you about it. But if you have any doubt, you are most welcome to send me an email of your research abstract that you have written, and might not be published for many years, or many 2 years, 3 years, some of your papers not been published. But whenever you write a research paper, normally this is our tendency, not to write the research paper for the sake of writing the research paper. And the research paper should have a dynamic application in the society or the industry. Otherwise, you should not write a research paper. That is my humble suggestion to everybody. Simply just by increasing the bulk of research paper, they put a copy paste in many other places and just collect 1 week data and publish it. And likewise, the research paper means should have a real impact of your research. And that is why the impact factor is more important when you write a high impact factor journals. So this is what an abstract writing. You can write apart from, so the abstract, it should not be, whether it is difficult to understand, it should not be difficult to understand. Structure, you have to structure it in a different way of while writing an abstract writing. Quickly and accurately identify basic content of the paper. Check if the research is of interest. To attract the interest and curiosity of the non-specialist reader, quickly acquaint the reader of current research, generate interest and curiosity of the non-specialist reader, entice potential readers into obtaining a copy of the full paper to be remembered long after the paper has been read. So whenever they read your abstract, even after long years, they should be able to remember the sentences that you have used in your abstract. That's more important, to be very concise and complete. So this is an abstract writing, descriptive and informative. What information it contained, purpose, method, scope of the report, article, paper, short, usually after 100 words, without results, conclusion and recommendation, organization, not contents, generates interest in the reader to go and look up the results, conclusion, recommendation of the paper. Informative abstract. Communicate specific information from the report, article and paper. Include the purpose, methods and scope of the work. Provide the report, article, papers, results, conclusion and recommendations. Make it as short as possible. Content of an abstract, problem statement, methodology, what has been done, how it was done, results, what was found, conclusions, and recommendation. This is the actual content of an abstract, which I said before. So it should be complete, it should be concise, it should be clear, and it should be cohesive, which means connective. So it should be complete, covers major part of the project. It should be concise, contain no excess wordness, unnecessary information. It should be clear. It should be clear for the reader to understand. It should be cohesive, flow smoothly between the parts. That's what. Hence, reread the article paper. Normally, if you write an abstract and reread it yourself with consciously with an involvement, you can understand the mistakes by yourself. And if you give it to some of your friends or some of your faculties there to correct your abstract, it will get refined. So more the people you give, more will get refined. So reread the article, paper, and report with the goal of abstracting. Look at main part of session, write first draft. Don't merely copy the sentences, because do not copy from materials and methods, conclusions, results and discussion. Do not copy from here. Create your own abstract. But please bear in mind, the abstract should be written after introduction, after material method, after results and discussion, after conclusion. Finally, only you should come and write an abstract. Not you write an abstract, then you write your research paper. That should not be the case. So that is how you have to completely write your novel ideas of conclusions, results and discussion, graphs, R-square values, everything you have to complete it. At the end of it, you must come back and write an abstract. So drop unnecessary information, add important information only, eliminate bad words and words which is not useful for you. So the history, previous, present status on the theme of your paper, critical review, similarities and dissimilarities of the paper conveys. And normally in abstract, you should not bring any authors normally. Why this paper is so important for the readers? You must bring what gap in research this paper identified and fulfilled. You must communicate in third line. What gap in research this paper has identified and fulfilled? Who is the end user of the thesis of the paper? What is the present status of your research? Why it has not been so successful? And how did you find the gap in research that has been fulfilled in your PhD thesis or research paper? The present paper has been attempted to evaluate, investigate, optimize, audit it. So this is what normally writing an introduction part of it, and where I would stop on the particular writing an abstract. I hope if you have any more clarifications to be done, I'll be very pleased to address. And this is a simple message for you on writing an abstract. And if you want to have more anything on writing an abstract, you can contact me on my email ID or whenever you feel like. I'll just pass on my email ID to you.